There's really kind of two things that you're talking about. And one is, okay, we have this system, and I want to break that down a little bit for folks that don't work in this space. And like, what does that really mean to be in a system that doesn't maybe welcome your authenticity? But there's also this, maybe having multiple different standards for different people within that system. As you mentioned, it's okay for one person to speak confidently and assertively about their ideas, and it's not really received the same way. And so I'm curious, are those two different things, or are they one and the same?
I wouldn't say that they're completely two different things. I think that they're related, because the thing about workplaces is that the workplace operates within institutions that operates within society. And so there's no kind of separating out what people have been socialized to understand around leadership or power or any of those things outside of the context of how they grew up. I think sometimes we're like, well, like that's, I believe that in my personal life, but this is how I show up in work, right? But sometimes we unconsciously don't understand that like the little things that we've internalized as we have grown up in society and as we take in information from society does impact how we show up in the workplace. And so when it comes to moments where, let's say we have John Doe and Jane Doe, and John Doe happens to be a straight white man, and he's in front of a client and he's like speaking confidently. Everyone is like, yes, great job. But when Jane Doe does it, who happens to be a woman of color, and she's speaking with confidence and she has strength in her voice, sometimes the feedback is like, oh, well, like maybe you should tone it down, or you came off a little too aggressive. That's where like the gendered and the racialized feedback come into play. It's the people sometimes giving that feedback. There are the people who are like trying to be rude and, gendered about the feedback, but there are the people who are thinking that they're doing a service to Jane Doe because they haven't worked through, oh, I have an internalized bias against women of color, any of those things. So I do think they're related, because oftentimes in the workforce, a lot of folks, whether you just entered the workforce or you've been in the workforce for 50 years, we all are coming in with our own socialized understandings of how other people should operate. And that in itself informs how we believe we're supposed to operate. And how much are we willing to risk that, right? Because I think there's also, once you understand that's how this operates, like not only do individuals, but the system is also allowing and enabling that. So the system being, let's say, like performance evaluations, right? So in addition to like individuals giving feedback, in an institution, you could find that, white men are moving at a faster rate than any other group of people. And so then you start to try and understand what's going on there. So when I say system, I'm thinking about like there's the personal and the interpersonal, but the system is what are the things around that are enabling kind of certain behaviors to happen and that aren't fighting or mitigating bias and fighting against those systems. And so I think it's really hard when people say, well, like I'm just doing a good job. Like I'm doing my best. We have to elevate that to say like, okay, well, what's happening then across the system? Because then people think it's just individual kind of problems when it's not. It's structural. It's almost always structural. But then we create solutions for individuals rather than creating solutions for like structural things, even just around things like leadership, our expectations of leadership. If we continue to kind of solve or make solutions just on like, well, that you need to do this and you need to do this, without kind of taking a step back and saying, okay, what are the patterns that are happening specifically when it comes to like marginalized folks? That's when we're able to create solutions that meet all of those individual needs.